Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Bjorn, and today we're going to do an Armored Warfare review of the K1A1 at Tier 7 and the Oplot BM. I'm going to show you both vehicles, show you the ammunition types, and I'm going to compare it to other vehicles, show you the stats, give you a feel of the vehicle itself, and I guess give you my opinion of the vehicle. So what we'll start with is here, we're going to do a quick armor inspector here of this. We'll start with the K1A1. So here's your armor map. It's pretty well what you see is what you get. Notice the weak spot here, and the lower glacis plate really isn't that thick. It's pretty well sloped, but it's not very thick. The turret, even compared to the Abrams, isn't very thick either. General thickness wise is what we're talking about here. Now the gun mantlet's very strong. I would never waste my time shooting the gun mantlet of this thing, but it's definitely got some weird armor to it. So as you can see, it gets it's not a very thick armored vehicle. So there's that. As there's a snowman now in my way. Let's pull up the stats here so you can see the stats. Just give you a few moments here to look at this. Well, you can pause the video. So this is what's different about this vehicle, and as you can see, I only have that as a rental. It actually does have upgrades, but you need to get the blueprints to unlock the upgrades, which I find interesting. Now this here, I'm not sure, I don't understand this because I actually do have the blueprint. You can see here. But you need 100 of them. Yeah, so there's that. But it is upgradable. It's got a spall liner, enhanced maintenance kit, targeting, improved targeting tracker, improved loader, and stage 2 engine kit. I honestly don't really know how I feel about this here. Typically you buy a premium vehicle, you open up your wallet, buy a premium vehicle, and it's fully upgraded. And here it looks like you're going to have to actually pay for the vehicle plus pay for upgrades. Not overly fond of that. So here, let's do some comparisons now so you can actually see the comparison. What I'll do is we'll start with the K1A1. We will also compare it to the Leopard 2. We will also compare it to the M1 Abrams, which is actually what the K1 is based on. And we will also compare it to the Challenger. Now, I'm not going to compare it to the Russian vehicles. The Russian vehicles are completely different animals. I feel that the Tier 7 Leopard 2, M1 Abrams, and Challenger are very comparable to the K1A1. So as you can see, it doesn't quite have the edge on penetration versus the Challenger 1, damage, but it does have an edge on damage compared to Abrams and Leopard. It's got the same penetration as Leopard 2, damage per minute. Now this damage per minute here, this is with a rammer. This thing's reload is actually pretty slow. It's actually over 10 seconds, which makes it even slower than the Leopard 2. The Leopard 2 here, I have no improved breach block on it. And this actually has a faster reload. than M1 Abrams here. This has I put a breech block on this, and this has no breech block. So just give you an idea here, the reload times, the hit points. It is the softest of the vehicles, and the hit points is actually more comparable to the Soviet vehicles of the same tier. You know, yeah, Abrams and Challenger, they're just the tougher of the bunch. Here's your general armor thicknesses, and this is where the vehicle loses out, and that's part of the problem with the vehicle, because even when you include the shaping of the armor, as you saw in Armor Inspector, it turns out drastically thinner than even M1 Abrams, even though certain areas of the K1 is better shaped than the M1. The M1 just having so much more thickness and its armor plating really makes up the difference. And that's the same way also with Challenger 1. So it's definitely, it loses out big time in the armor department. Mobility, it's not the most mobile machine. Better than Challenger 1, but it's worse off than Leopard 2 and even Abrams. Except for in Hall Traverse against the Abrams, and same way with the 0 to 32. It's the same as Abrams for 0 to 32, but top speed is marginal. You know, they're pretty much, when it comes to mobility, these two vehicles are exactly identical, and that's the only way to really put it. Except for the Hall Traverse is just a little bit better with K1A1. Camouflage. It's not the top of the bunch, as you can see, but it's not the worst of the bunch either. You know, it's definitely on the better end of the spectrum, and the view range. That's the same way. It's on the better end of the spectrum, but it's not the best. Now, gun depression. Now, we're just going to do straight up gun depression. It's pretty equal to all three vehicles. However, the K1A1 has an active hydropneumatic suspension, and because of the suspension actually stacks on and gives it even better gun depression and elevation than its counterparts. Maximum deviation, it's about where M1 is. I mean, that much deviation between the two is a moot point. But it's not as good as Leopard 1. It's not as good as, Leopard 2. And it's definitely not as good as Challenger 1. Aim time, it's solid aim time. Very good, actually very good aim time on the gun. And the turret traverse, as you can see, it's not the best turret traverse. Very close to what Abrams is. Definitely better than Challenger 1. So there you go. There's the whole shoot match, statistically speaking. This vehicle is really weird to me. There's a couple areas where the vehicle feels extremely weird and unique. There's a couple areas where it's like, well, that really sucks. The two I'm going to point out the most, especially because of being a PvE player, ammo count, 32 rounds just isn't enough ammo. Most games I'm desperately running low on ammo, or I have to use my kit just to reload ammo. That really sucks, honestly. You know, if you're playing the vehicle right, you're not going to take much damage. The kit is a waste to me just for ammo, but it is what it is. Which also bases the reload speed and everything else. When it comes down to it, the DPM on this vehicle versus the other vehicles, it's not extremely different. This thing you don't want to keep in a sustained battle for a long period of time, because obviously then the low amount of ammunition really becomes noticeable versus the other vehicles. You know, Abrams has almost 50 rounds. Leopard has, I think, about 50 rounds. Challenger, I think, has 50 rounds. So, yeah, that's kind of a bit of a problem with the vehicle, which also gives you why I feel they gave it such great damage per shot, but also such a slow reload, and also great penetration. I feel it's a very good balancing factor to give the gun the ability to pretty much penetrate almost every time it fires, but give it a slow reload and a high DPM, or sorry, high DPS. So there's that. I really don't know what else I can say about the vehicle. It's unique. I think with the upgrades, this thing could actually turn out to be damn near OP. But unfortunately, without the upgrades, I can't tell you. I mean, the hit points I could be being fooled here by the durability of the vehicle, seeing as there's an additional 400 hit points we get just by having the spall liner. The aim time could be improved. Here's an improved loader. So this thing could actually turn out to be pretty beastly when it's fully upgraded. Stock, I would say it's a lot of on par or subpar when it comes to the statistics. The current way to get this vehicle right now is through the Arabian Nights crates, and essentially it's a gamble. I don't like the idea of gambling for a vehicle. If it was a straight up buy, I could possibly see myself buying this vehicle. It's an interesting vehicle. I don't think necessarily it's a great vehicle. It's just very interesting, to say the least. I did take this thing out into a couple PvP matches, and that's actually extremely interesting. Now in PvP, for the most part, the low amount of ammunition doesn't become a problem. The reload can be a little bit of a problem, as your enemies are most likely going to be able to throw out more shots than you are, especially if it's a long slugfest. The armor's a bit of a problem in PvP because it's not a brawler. If you're put into a brawler situation, you're going to be outperformed by every vehicle of its tier. Unfortunately, right now with the way things are, and that just goes back to I don't know how this vehicle is fully upgraded. Having this thing fully upgraded could be a major difference. And that's another part of the vehicle I really don't like, is this right here. Either, if I'm going to open my wallet for a vehicle, give me the damn vehicle. Don't give me this shit too. That's just personal opinion. It's kind of hard for me to gauge how good or bad the vehicle is. As a Ridge Warrior, this thing's really good, and due to the suspension, you can kind of put yourself in positions other tanks can't put itself into. I mean, I consider the Abrams and the Challenger having great gun depression, but once you actually add in that, the way the suspension works, with aiming over hills and things like that, this thing can become pretty ridiculous and actually strike from areas other tanks can't. So that's a valuable thing to point out about the vehicle. The turret can withstand some hits. You got to be very careful though, because like I said, there's that weak spot right here in the middle area. This Glacius plate, I really would not rely on any of this plate. Now down here, it's a little bit better angled than the upper part. Most likely, if you're going to get penned on the plate, this is where it's going to be. Don't get yourself caught out in the open in this vehicle. Some other things I do want to point out about the vehicle too, and I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, could be RNG, just absolutely despised me. But it seems like every time this vehicle gets penned, I lose multiple modules or crew members. And I mean, looking at the vehicle, it looks like it's actually a pretty tightly packed vehicle. That could be a part of it, but it's nothing to lose multiple modules in one hit. The other thing I've noticed too, pretty much any hits on the side of the rear of the hull or even the engine, you're going to set on fire. I've only played about a dozen games in this, and 3 of them I got myself in a pretty bad position because how the match had went, and this thing struck up like a Ronson lighter, strikes first every time, or lights first every time, something like that. I don't remember what the saying was, but yeah, this thing's a cooker. That could be a fluke. I don't know, but it's definitely a thing I feel like I need to point out because it could be an ongoing theme that your tank is going to be set on fire. And actually, the one time I did get lit on fire, I actually got shot through the front of the tank, not the rear. So, yeah, I'd say that's an important feature to point out. So there's the K1A1. Now we're going to move up to the Tier 9, which is the Oplot BM. This is a Ukrainian main battle tank based off the T-80DU. Yeah, this thing is, this thing's even probably more interesting in many regards than the K1A1. Now, it doesn't have any special suspension. There's no upgrades. It's completely unlocked, except for this. I'm still trying to find out from the community management what this is about. Things I'm going to point out, and I'm going to do some comparisons here. This thing's armor is actually really trolly. You're going to see something weird here when I pull it open. Now, unfortunately, I only have one Tier 9 right now besides this rental. But what I'll do is here, we're going to add this to comparison. We're going to go to vehicles. And it's probably going to be most comparable, and it looks like it'll be most comparable to the T90MS, which I'll get onto that shortly. And we will put the M1 Abrams up here. I don't feel this is a good the M1 Abrams is a good comparison to the Oplot, mostly because once again they're different. The T90MS to the BM here. They're very similar animals, and you can tell by the way they play. This plays just like any other Soviet vehicle. It doesn't have good gun depression. It can brawl based on what you're doing. The armor's semi-reliable, although it's actually fairly reliable here with the BM. And comparing it to the Abrams, it's the Abrams is just a different warrior. It's meant to be kind of a ridge warrior. With brawling as an afterthought. But here you go. Now the problem here too is also because I don't have the T90MS. The current build is a stock build. I think actually fully upgraded. I would like to see the MS fully upgraded to see how it compares to the Oplot. Unfortunately, I just don't have the time. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get the MS in 6 days, unfortunately, unless I play a hell of a lot of Armored Warfare. So what you got here, looking at it, it looks like the stats are very similar. Honestly, I'm looking at this going, well, if looking at the tech tree for the MS here, there's better armor piercing rounds, which probably will give me roughly the same armor piercing, probably roughly the same damage. There's an auto loader for it, which will probably give me roughly the same rate of fire. There's a spall liner for it, which actually I think the MS might win out on hit points. As you can see, the armors are exactly identical. There's some things I want to point out though with the Oplot here shortly. Now speed-wise, it looks like the Oplot wins out. I could be missing them, but I did not notice any direct upgrades that would improve the mobility too god awfully much for the MS. Camouflage factors and spotting factors. The Oplot wins on spotting, the Oplot wins on camouflage, but honestly, even comparing to the T90MS, camouflages are very similar. Spotting ranges are very similar between all the three vehicles. There's really no win there. Now, one thing I did notice here, right here, this is the big one. Especially this line right here, the cannon depression. The Oplot definitely wins on the cannon depression. However, it loses out to the Abrams. You have the deviation, which once again, that's not it's not a major difference. Aim speed, well, it looks better on paper than the MS, but once again, stock MS. These two are probably actually about the same, and it's even about the same as the Abrams. Now, feeling wise, playing a couple rounds in the Oplot, playing a whole ton of games in the M1A2C. The M1 definitely feels better firing on the move than the Oplot does. I know that's weird when you look at the accuracies and the aim times and things of that nature, but yeah, that's just how it is. Turret traverse, the Oplot definitely wins. Once again, though, there could be an upgrade I'm not sure of for the MS here, which could put it on par. So honestly, looking at it on paper, for the most part, the Oplot looks pretty much like the T90 MS. There might be a couple areas where the Oplot wins. And comparing to the Abrams is a harder, much tougher tank. Abrams has much thicker armor, but there's a lot better shaping to the Oplot than the Abrams, honestly. And the Abrams has a pretty notorious weak spot around the driver's hatch and gun mantlet, so that's part of the issue there with the Abrams. The Abrams actually, if you got rid of its two weak spots, the same with the Abrams, it'd be the king of the battlefield. Vehicle mass, it's not a heavy vehicle. But yeah, so there you go. That's pretty much it for the vehicle. It wins out. It wins out in some areas, but it loses out in some others. The tank does feel really good. The one thing I will point out about the Oplot as I played it, there's a couple things that. One thing that particularly feels weird is right here. It's a 2-shot APS, but it's also got a soft kill system. What ends up happening is after you use up the hard kill, it becomes a soft kill system, which I found very interesting. The hard kill system is amazing. It's great versus ATGMs. But it's only 2 shots, which is really weird. I compared it to some of the other vehicles. A lot of the other vehicles has anywhere from 6 and up for a hard kill system. So other things to point out: there's lots of explosive reactive armor. There's applique armor just everywhere on this machine. Even the sides. As you can see here, the sides is covered in nothing but applique armor. The front hull is covered in applique armor. You got these covers here, which is these flaps, which are supposed to help protect the vehicle from heat rounds, the lower glacis. The turret here, this turret can actually eat shots from a T-15. I was actually pretty pleased. I got a couple games up against T-15s, and the turret just ate the shots like a champ. And that's considering that actually really means, it's explosive reactive armor, but it's flat. Very interesting. So yeah, there's that vehicle. How does it feel? I'm still waiting to find out how this vehicle works. I haven't been given a price tag yet. From what it looks like, there might be a special crate coming up, where it's a random draw tank. It kind of looks like the crate will have like gold, premium time, and a couple different tanks, and most of them are like tier 7 and up tanks. Looking at it on paper, it's one of those things I ain't gonna know till the rubber meets the road. I ain't gonna know the price tag of the crates until I get some questions answered. I think the vehicle could actually be worth it. It's a very solid tank. But once again, it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a gamble with this vehicle. So I'm not too sure You know, how much do you want to really gamble that you might get one, you might not get one? That's the value is based on you. What I can say between the two vehicles, the K1A1 and the Oplot, if I was to put money down for just one vehicle, if I only had the choice between one of the two, I would buy this vehicle. It's a solid, it's a solid choice. It follows through with a lot of the other Soviet vehicles. They all feel pretty good. Especially in the T80 line, it feels like a lot like a T90. As you can see here, I do, I favor them. I already dropped some money down for the Object 187, which is another good vehicle. It does feel like a good vehicle. And I'm not saying the K1A1's a bad vehicle. When the rubber meets the road, the Oplot BM feels like the better choice between the two vehicles. So there you go. That's how I feel about the vehicles. There's the stats. Something else I forgot to point out. This has a very wide variety of ammunition. You have ATGM, heat rounds, AP, high explosive. With the K1A1, that only has heat and AP rounds. So I forgot those little details. But so there you go. There's the stats of the vehicles. There's what I feel about the vehicles. If all I can say is if you got any questions for me, put them in the comments below, and I will try to answer them. And I'm going to upload this video pretty directly. Now, unfortunately, I've already uploaded tomorrow's video for tomorrow's Armored Warfare replay. So there will be an Oplot replay and a K1A1 replay coming soon in the coming week. So what I'd say is if you want to keep an eye out for those so you can actually see these vehicles in action, subscribe to the channel. Also, like the video if you enjoyed the video. But like I said, this is really different for me. I'm not quite sure where to go with everything, how to answer questions. Part of the problem here is I really don't have a price tag on some of the vehicles, and like that. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the review, and I will see you all next time.